And for this week, honestly, this is a story that I just cannot ignore. It is the biggest movie story that has occurred this week. And my God, the more that I look into it, the more research I would do for it, it's just really fascinating. And honestly, like, I look at it and I think to myself, I just can't not talk about this. I mean, I just gotta share my thoughts with it, with the people, because there's a lot of crazy stuff that's been going on. And even to this day, people on the internet are still freaking out about the scenarios that have been going on. Now, before that, allow me to tell you guys a little bit of a story. Now, as you guys may know, Phil Lord and Chris Miller are pretty much in the top of their game when it comes to being movie directors. Ever since 2014, when they have released both the Lego Movie and 22 Jump Street, they were like the toast of Hollywood, and they've gathered such a huge fan base in terms of their comedic style and with their movies. Like, they really were like some of the biggest names in Hollywood and gained massive support. So, when the news broke out that they would be the directors for the upcoming Han Solo spin-off film on Star Wars, like, everybody flipped out. Like, people got totally excited that they got Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the guys who brought us the 21 Jump Street films and the Lego Movie, and they're gonna go and do a Star Wars movie. They're gonna do something so monumental. It's like one of the biggest honors that you can have in Hollywood. But then, everything changed this week when the Fire Nation freaking attacked. The news broke out that Lord and Miller left production of the Han Solo spin-off film. And it really did come as a major shock because, like, in terms of the production, they only got 3/4 of the filming finished, and they didn't even get into the post-production yet. So leaving at this time is absolutely shocking. And Phil Lord and Chris Miller, while the president of Lucasfilms, Kristine Belson, they said their little goodbyes, and they said that, oh, you know, it was great working with them. Okay, bye-bye, thank you, and all that kind of stuff. Like, here's a little quote from Phil Lord and Chris Miller. It stated, "Unfortunately, our vision and process, excuse me, let me restart that. Unfortunately, our vision and process weren't aligned with our partners on this project. We normally aren't fans of the phrase creative differences, but for once, this cliche is true. We are really proud of the amazing and world-class work of our cast and crew." And I'm sure Kristine Belson said something. Like, she did put out a quote, but I don't know if in this article specifically on Variety has it as well. But okay, anyways, it doesn't really matter. But what is actually really interesting is that you would see a lot of different sources on different film journalists' websites that they would say, like, they would say different things. Like, they would say that Phil Lord and Chris Miller quit, or that they just left, or that they decided they don't want to do it anymore. Kind of like make it show that Phil Lord and Chris Miller, like, they decided to leave on their own terms. But that is not what happened. They didn't quit. They got legitimately fired. Now you might be wondering, why? Why would they fire Phil Lord and Chris Miller? Well, apparently, ever since day one of production, it was basically Lord and Miller versus the Lucasfilm crew. So, like, every day, they were fighting off against the president, Kathleen Kennedy. They were fighting off against the crew at Lucasfilm, and they were fighting off against the executive producer and co-writer of this movie, Lawrence Kasdan. And if you guys don't know, Lawrence Kasdan is actually a veteran at Lucasfilm and also a Star Wars veteran. He has actually been a writer for the franchise ever since Empire Strikes Back. And he was even credited as one of the writers, or at least the screenplay writer, of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So basically, they were pretty much clashing and fighting to get their vision done, where the Lucasfilm crew just wanted to do it the Lucasfilm way, while Lord and Miller wanted to do it the Lord and Miller way. And ever since then, it really put in a mass hysteria on the internet. People were wondering, what's going to happen now? Are they still going to be getting credits for making this movie? Like, what's going to be the next step? Well, apparently, just 2 days after Lord and Miller got fired, Lucasfilm decided to go and bring in Ron Howard, a big name, another big name director, but someone who has years of experience, to go and be the director of the Han Solo spin-off movie. Now, at this point, as I am recording this, there's no other information of what's going to be happening next. How are they going to be resolving this issue on who's going to be taking credit for the directorial work, especially, like I said before, the fact that it happened only during 3/4 of filming being done and all that stuff. So far, the one good thing is that this is not affecting the production at all, so that it doesn't mean that the Han Solo spin-off film is going to be delayed or anything. It's still going to be scheduled in May 2018. But with this whole process, what's going on right now is that Ron Howard's job is going to be to go and calm things down at Lucasfilms, to tell everyone that everything is going to be okay, to meet up with the cast, and that production is going to resume in July. Now, the one thing that I have seen that everybody is pretty much reacting is the fact that people are pissed off at Disney and Lucasfilm for actually firing Phil Lord and Chris Miller. They're pretty much mad now, saying it's like, oh man, now this movie is gonna suck. You lost the opportunity to put in the greatest directors of our time, and now they're gonna be gone, and all that kind of stuff. But you know, if I could be honest, if I could play devil's advocate, I kind of see why Lucasfilm had to take out Lord and Miller in this situation. Because in this case, it really does say a lot about the filmmaking of Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Because the thing is that what Lucasfilm wanted to do is that they wanted to craft a Star Wars movie. And they have their traditional ways of trying to create a Star Wars movie. But with Lord and Miller, they wanted to basically create a Lord and Miller movie. They wanted to do the same thing like whatever they've done for 21 Jump Street and for the Lego movie, and just do whatever the fridge they want. And that is a little bit worrisome for Lucasfilm, because like the biggest fear that they have is that the Han Solo spin-off film under Lord and Miller would become a little bit too different to the other Star Wars films. And that's what they want to do. Like, that's what the job required. Is that they wanted you to create a Star Wars film first, and then your film second. That's basically the whole point. But with Lord and Miller, they wanted to create their film first, and then a Star Wars film second. Like, the whole Star Wars aspect would be just an afterthought. So they wanted more their tone to come out. But that's the thing. When you're assigned to do a Star Wars movie, you actually do have some rules to go in order to create a Star Wars movie. You're not just making anyone else's movie, you are legitimately making a Star Wars movie. So you do have to follow a template. You do have to follow a color palette. You do have to follow a tone. You have to make it so that your Star Wars movie can easily fit in with some of the other ones. That's basically what J.J. Abrams did. Like, he wanted to create a Star Wars film first, and then a J.J. Abrams film second. With The Force Awakens, you can easily fit it with some of the other ones, with Empire Strikes Back, and with A New Hope, and Return of the Jedi, and all that kind of stuff. That's what Lucasfilms was worried about. They were afraid that Lord and Miller were making something that is way too drastically different, to the point that you can't really fit it in any other Star Wars film. And interestingly enough, ultimately, I think this really does say something about the filmmaking of Lord and Miller, or at least their filmmaking style. Because I think for the first time ever with this entire situation, we are seeing a limitation from Lord and Miller, something that they cannot do. And that is doing someone else's work. Like, they cannot make anyone's movie but their own. Like I said, the job required them to make a Star Wars movie first, and then a Lord and Miller film second. But they cannot do that. They wanted to make a Lord and Miller film first. And when you think about some of their other movies, it is true. Like, they really do have a lot of creative liberties into it. And I know it does seem a little bit contradictory for me to say that, considering that many of their movies are based on already existing properties. Like when you think about 21 Jump Street, that is actually based on an old TV show, or Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. That's actually based on a children's book. But when you do compare those two things, they are drastically different to the Lord and Miller films. Like when Phil Lord and Chris Miller made the 21 Jump Street movie, their mindset was not to make a 21 Jump Street movie first. It was to make a Lord and Miller movie first, and then a 21 Jump Street movie. You can't really make a comparison to the 21 Jump Street series because it is completely different. And don't even ask me to make any sort of comparison or like whatever happened in terms of the transition of the children's book Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs to the movie. If you ask me, somewhere down the line, my God, cocaine must be involved because sweet merciful Neptune. Like, how can you screw up that bad and make a style that, sweet Jesus balls, it's just, what the fridge happened there, really? No, but you get what I mean. They weren't making a movie that would be respectful to the source material. They wanted to go and create their own thing first. And even with the Lego movie, in a sense, so far, as I am recording this, that's their most original movie that they've done so far, because basically they were asked to do a movie based on Legos. So, of course, they would have a lot more creative freedom. And I will say right now, Lord and Miller are lucky. They really were extremely lucky over the fact that in the beginning of their career, Sony Pictures gave them that much creative freedom. Because if it were done by any other studio so far, like, they wouldn't even have a career. Like, they would be immediately kicked out, just like what happened with the Han Solo spin-off film. So yeah, it really does show some of the limitations. So at this point, what's going to happen is that I don't think we're going to be seeing Lord and Miller making movies based on already existing properties, or at least based on already existing movie franchises. Like, you're not going to see Lord and Miller make another Ghostbusters movie, or you're not going to see them add into something like, you know, we're gonna have them do another Fast and Furious movie or a Transformers movie or anything like that. You know, they're gonna be stuck making something in which they have the creative freedom to go and create a Lord and Miller movie above anyone else's movie first. So it is a little bit of an interesting analysis. Now, I'm not saying that this is actual fact about their filmmaking style. This is just a little bit of a theory that I thought up based on what we have witnessed with the whole scenario that happened with the Han Solo spin-off movie, and also some of their previous works as well. So that's the thing with Lord and Miller. They have to create their movie first before anyone else's. Even if it's a Star Wars movie, they don't want to make a Star Wars movie. They want to make a Lord and Miller movie first. Now, I will say, however, ever since then, a lot of people now express a lot of doubt, saying that maybe the movie is not going to be good now that Ron Howard is in there. And I do understand that there are a lot of movies that Ron Howard has under his belt that are not so great. I mean, like, he did do the live action How the Grinch Stole Christmas movies, and then he also did the Da Vinci Code trilogy. But I am actually still optimistic that the Han Solo movie is still going to come out as really good. Because keep in mind, Ron Howard actually does have something that Lord and Miller does not. Decades worth of experience as a director. I mean, keep in mind, Lord and Miller are new. They're, they're kind of like the next big thing. What happened with Lord and Miller is that, yeah, sure, they're the directors of the 21 Jump Street movies and the Lego movie. You know what other movies that they have directed? None. Because all they did so far is just the 21 Jump Street films and the Lego movie. Those are the only ones that are worth noting. With Ron Howard, however, he has so many movies under his belt. I mean, sure, he has a lot of bad ones, but that's a process that all directors go through. Like, of course there's going to be at least one bad movie under a director's belt, or at least something that's not on par to their other films. And another thing that Ron Howard actually has that Lord and Miller does not, Oscar recognition. Specifically, actually winning an Oscar for being Best Director. So, if I would tell you that Lord and Miller would actually be replaced with an Oscar-winning director, I don't even have to say the name, you'd probably still be optimistic. You say, okay, that still sounds good, but because the name Ron Howard is attached to it, like, of course, there are many other examples that you can randomly pick out that are bad, but that's because he has the experience that would allow you to do so. Lord and Miller does not. They don't have the years and decades of experience where you could pick out some of the examples that could be bad, where it could be a bad idea. And keep in mind, like, I'm keeping an open, like, when it comes to the Han Solo spin-off film, I'm keeping an open mind of how it's going to end up. I mean, sure, maybe it might turn out bad, or maybe it could turn out good. Maybe there is the possibility that replacing Ron Howard, replacing Lord and Miller with Ron Howard is actually a good idea. And maybe with what Lord and Miller wanted to do with the Han Solo spin-off film, it might actually turn out to be bad. They might actually bring out a bad movie and it could be a massive disappointment. There is still that possibility. And I mean, keep in mind, when it comes to Phil Lord and Chris Miller, not everything they touch turns into gold. We're talking about the freaking directors of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, for God's sakes. So you cannot expect that whatever Lord and Miller are going to direct is immediately going to be a masterpiece, just simply by the fact that Lord and Miller directed it. Simple as that. No, you cannot expect that. So overall, maybe things are still going to turn out well with the Han Solo film, and maybe this could be what the movie needs. Like, maybe having Lord and Miller as directors is a bad idea. And I know for a fact that I'm gonna get a lot of crap for that, because I know that there are gonna be a lot of so many butthurt fanboys that are gonna be so pissed to hear that maybe the idea of Lord and Miller not being attached to Han Solo is actually a good thing. Like, they're going to be so enraged in the comment section. I know that's going to happen, but still, I mean, like, I'm just going to remain optimistic for this idea. But yeah, honestly, it was just a really interesting thing to look into. And yeah, it does say a lot about Phil Lord and Chris Miller, about their directing style and how they want to go and do movies.